9 spine-chilling Maid horror stories. Discover the sinister truths that haunt the living. Rachel was desperate. The air in her cluttered apartment felt thick, almost suffocating, echoing her financial woes and the weight of a mother's anxiety. She only sought a better life for her son, but life had other plans. With job listings dwindling and bills piling up, the universe threw her the lifeline, a maid position with the Harrisons, a wealthy suburb family. As she approached their enormous mansion, the opulence loomed over her like a storm cloud. Crystal chandeliers dangled from high ceilings, and gardens bloomed with flowers that seemed happier than she ever felt. This lavish world was like stepping into another reality, but soon, Rachel would discover that sometimes, appearances are deadly. Rachel's excitement dimmed quickly. The moment she stepped inside, a chill crept along her spine. The lights flickered, casting shadows that danced around the corners of elaborately decorated rooms. Whispers curled through the halls, almost teasing her as she gathered dust from the polished shelves. At first, she thought it was just her imagination, the leftover fear from late nights spent worrying at home. But when she stumbled upon a broken phone charger for the second time, a shiver crept down her neck. She hadn't dropped it this time. Dread flared through her. What other secrets hid beneath the Harrisons' meticulously crafted facade? The atmosphere grew heavier as she dusted, unease spidering over her skin. There were cold drafts in corners, noises that didn't belong. Mr. Harrison's watchful gaze weighed down on her. It felt protective but was more like a predator studying prey. And then she learned about the last maid gone without a trace. Her heart thudded. Rachel needed the job, but she needed to survive more. Her fingers found a loose floorboard while doing laundry. Heart pounding, she pried it open, revealing a diary hidden in the dark void. Weeks of frantic scrawls leapt off the pages, detailing dark secrets, things that haunted the pristine garden. Each word felt like a warning from beyond, interweaving the despair of the previous maid's plummeting sanity with Rachel's own growing anxiety. The walls felt alive, heavy with sorrow, twisting her perception of reality. What darkness was entwined with the Harrisons' seemingly perfect life? Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The whispers morphed into wails, echoing through Jerry's corridors. Each breath grew louder, filling Rachel with terror. She charged into shadows, yearning for clarity but surrounded by lies. The family portrait loomed overhead, smiles trapped in a moment where shadows licked their ankles. Confronting the couple only tightened their smiles, a mere disguise for the truths concealed in their glances. They changed, cold, guarded, wrapping Rachel deeper in their tightening net. That night, she stood at the garden's edge, trembling hand reaching for a hidden door. Something pulled her toward it, an unseen force captured every ounce of her being. The wind howled through the trees, and the whispers raised a keening wail, piercing the tranquil night. As Rachel turned the handle, a nightmare stood waiting. It called for her, darker than she anticipated. What lay beyond the door that promised to unveil secrets, or perhaps destroy her and her son forever? She hesitated, heart thumping wildly in her chest as that handle felt like ice against her palm. The whispers grew, wrapping around her like a cold fog. She forced herself to turn it. The door creaked open, revealing a narrow, dark staircase descending into the bowels of the earth. It smelled damp and rotten, a stark contrast to the pristine air above. Rachel swallowed hard. What was she doing? This was madness. But deep down, a pulse of hope flickered. Maybe the answers lay down there, buried in shadows. Maybe she would find the truth about the last maid, or worse. A gust of wind rushed past her as if warning her to stop. She stepped back, glancing nervously at the mansion's imposing silhouette, catching sight of Mr. Harrison's figure watching from the second-floor window. His eyes flickered, almost glinting with something unknown and sinister. Rachel's instincts screamed at her to run. But she couldn't. She wouldn't. Not when her son depended on her. Clenching her fists, she took a deep breath and crossed the threshold. Each step echoed down the staircase, swallowing the light. The air grew colder. She flicked on her phone's flashlight, the beam cutting through the pitch black. Cobwebs brushed against her face, and she flinched, swatting them away. What lay at the end of the descent? What was hidden in the dark? The stairway opened into a small, damp chamber lined with stone. At its center stood a bizarre altar covered in old, yellowing cloth. Rachel stepped closer, her heart racing. Engraved symbols snaked across the altar, images that made her blood run cold. She recognized some from the diary, ritualistic, desperate, begging for release. A sudden clatter echoed behind her. Rachel spun around, flashlight beam bouncing wildly in panic. Her breath caught in her throat. There was someone else down here. A figure crouched in a corner, shrouded in darkness. Their back faced her, long hair cascading down like shadows. Who are you?" Rachel stammered, fear gripping her throat. The figure remained silent. Goosebumps trailed down her arms. She fought the urge to bolt. "Please, I just need answers." Slowly, the figure turned. Rachel gasped. The face was familiar, twisted with torment, a reflection of her own fear etched into every line. It was the last maid, the one who had vanished. Her eyes were wild, sunken deep with despair. "Run!" The last maid shrieked, desperation unleashing a wave of cold terror. "They're coming!" The darkness thickened around Rachel, and the air crackled with something evil. She needed to escape. She turned, sprinting back toward the stairs, but the shadows shifted, blocking her path. A hollow laughter reverberated within the chamber, unseen, mocking. With a surge of adrenaline, Rachel managed to shove past, darting up the steps. As her hands grasped the rickety rail, she felt an icy grip on her ankle, pulling her back into the abyss. Panic flared, and she kicked wildly until the grip released, sending her tumbling into a heap on the ground. Breathless and trembling, she scrambled to her feet and ran into the main hall, heart racing louder than the sound of thundering footsteps behind her. The Harrisons stood at the doorway, their expressions hard, as if placed in ice. The door slammed shut, trapping her. No escape. Now, with nowhere left to turn, Rachel faced the weight of their gaze, filled with unspoken fear and a striking realization this house was a prison and there were things more terrifying than the shadows. As she backed away, something shifted in the depths of her mind. The diary. The last maid's warning. Had she misread the signs? What if unveiling the truth led to something more grotesque than she'd imagined? Rachel's breath turned into frantic gasps. With her back against the wall, she whispered, "What do you want from me?" The couple's lips twitched in unsettling smiles, yet their eyes held a darkness that promised no mercy. What were they hiding? What was the cost of survival in this twisted world? And as the shadows stretched around her, she recognized she had two choices: uncover every sinister layer, threatening her life, or become another secret buried within the walls of the mansion. But Rachel was no coward. She would fight or die trying. The terror ahead felt closer than breaths away. As she took one step forward, ready to confront the Harrisons and the whispers that haunted her, the lights flickered violently, plunging her into darkness once again. What would she unleash in her quest to save herself and her son? The room was swallowed by the darkness, the flickering lights cutting out like a heartbeat fading. Rachel's breath quickened, every sense heightened, every instinct on fire. The Harrisons towered before her, their faces shadowed but their presence undeniable, a living nightmare made flesh. "You're trapped," Mr. Harrison said, his voice a smooth dagger that twisted in her gut. Every syllable dripped with malice. "Stay with us, and find peace." "Peace?" Rachel spat, her voice echoing in the vast emptiness. "You think this, whatever this is, offers peace?" Mrs. Harrison stepped forward, her movements languid and deliberate, like a predator coiling to strike. "You don't understand. We're protecting you from the horrors that await if you leave. Rachel steadied herself against the wall, seeking the flimsy comfort of something solid beneath her fingertips. Questions raced through her mind, frantically grasping at answers as the shadows seemed to pulse around her, alive and hungry. Had they been luring her all along? As the darkness thickened, memories of the maid flickered back, a story from the diary that wouldn't let go. The candles, the rituals, the whispers. Had the last maid given her a warning? Her thoughts spiraled. Was she meant to join their twisted family? Was she to become like the last maid, lost to her fate? Suddenly, a crash from above shattered her frantic reverie. The mansion groaned as if alive, the floorboards creaking under an unseen weight. Rachel's heart raced. Something was coming. The urgency surged within her. Ms. Harrison smiled, a frigid and unyielding expression. That's just them waking up. The others are family. They don't like intruders. Others? Rachel managed to choke out, the word felt foreign and heavy on her tongue. Before she could process further, the far wall began to split apart, shadowy forms pushing through the cracks like black smoke. Figures emerged, their eyes sunken like endless pits, their lips twisted into grotesque grins. They were dressed in tattered uniforms, the last maids, returning to reclaim their own, the room filled with their hollow whispers, chanting her name, drawing closer, the air thick with the stench of decay and desperation. Join us, surrender, Rachel's instinct screamed. She couldn't let them take her. With a sudden surge of determination, she lunged for the door, but it slammed shut, the sound echoing like a death knell. She turned, her mind racing. The staircase was still there, a dark promise of escape. If she could just make it back down. The Harrisons moved closer, their presence suffocating. Stay. You have to finish what was started, Mr. Harrison commanded, stepping forward like a wraith from a nightmare. No. Rachel cried, her voice cracking. She felt the shadows closing in, the whispers rising. She could almost see the face of the last maid swirling in the depths, her eyes pleading. She had to fight. With a primal roar, Rachel charged at them, adrenaline surging like a wild river. She broke through the barrier of pressing shadows, to the massive door. With all her strength, she slammed her shoulder against it, feeling the wood splinter under her force. In that split second of chaos, her determination cut through the veil. The door cracked open just wide enough, a breath of freedom, a sliver of hope. But behind her, the laughter rose, echoing like thunder in the depths of the night. Flee if you wish, but the truth will find you, Mrs. Harrison whispered in a voice tinged with dark delight. Rachel bolted through the door, scrambling down the hallway as the haunting chorus rose behind her. She didn't look back. She couldn't as Rachel raced back to the stairs, another surge of shadows swept through, engulfing her in their icy grip. Save him. The chorus shrieked, and she froze at the foot of the stairs, realization dawning. What awaited her at the bottom wasn't just truths about the mansion, it was a reckoning with her own soul. Before she could decide, a chilling wind howled through the air, dragging her backward. She grasped at the railing, heart pounding, breath catching. Fighting against the tide of darkness that yearned to swallow her whole, but there was something else now. A figure flickered against the dark, barely illuminated by the faint moonlight bleeding through the windows. A figure that looked all too familiar, the last maid. Help me, she echoed, her voice drawing Rachel further into the depths, and as despair threatened to engulf her, a thunderous crash split the darkness above. The whole house trembled. What had been unleashed within those walls? What awaited Rachel in the darkness below, waiting for her to confront the truth? The wind howled like a wounded beast, swirling through the rot of the corridor. Rachel felt its icy fingers clawing at her skin as she fought against the shadows clamoring for her. Her heart raced wildly, each beat thunderous and frantic. The last maid loomed near, her ethereal form flickering like a dying flame. Help me, she repeated, eyes pleading, stretching a hand toward Rachel. It was a lifeline or a trap, Rachel couldn't quite tell. Every instinct screamed to run, yet curiosity held her in place. Who are you? Rachel demanded, the question bursting from her lips with a mix of fear and desperation. The maid's shadows danced around her as she inched closer, a glimmer of sunlight trapped in her smoky visage. You must remember you're not alone. Together, we can stop them. A scream echoed from somewhere deep within the mansion, bone-chilling and heart-stopping. It came from below, the source of the horror that gripped this house like a vice. Rachel's world spun, her mind battling the conflicting urges to flee or to help the maid. Save him. The voice from the shadows grew louder, more insistent. The Harrisons, the twisted, malevolent beings of the house were closing in, and she had to choose. Rachel's pulse thundered in her ears. She glanced down the staircase, the darkness beckoned, and the shadows twisted like serpents, driven by hunger. What if I go down there? What will I find? Rachel whispered, trembling. The truth, the maid replied, her eyes narrowing. You must confront the past. Only then can we be free. Rachel's feet itched to move, an urgency washed over her. How could she free herself from this nightmare? Suddenly, a shrill laugh ruptured the air, a chorus of manic joy that turned her stomach. You think you can save him? Mr. Harrison's voice slithered from the depths. You're just a pawn, like the rest. Rachel felt a chilling wave crest as Mrs. Harrison joined him, her presence saturating the air with foreboding. You must fulfill your destiny, child. Don't you want to know what it feels like to finally belong? Belong? Rachel spat, bitterness rising. A dark fury ignited within her. This isn't belonging. This is a prison. The shadows swirled faster, surrounded by taunting whispers, scraping against the walls of her sanity. She looked back at the maid, the flickering figure was losing form, fading with the chant of darkness. You have to trust me, the maid implored, fading like a distant memory. I don't trust anyone. Rachel screamed, shaking with panic. The weight of monstrous eyes surrounded her, cold and judging. The whispers receded momentarily, and silence fell heavy between her breaths. Every shadow twitched in anticipation. Rachel lunged toward the staircase, her instincts sharper than ever. But the instant she moved, darkness erupted, the very walls trembling as if responding to her defiance. Fear ignited her legs, she dashed toward the staircase. Heart pounding, she stepped down, barely catching the glimmer of the last maid, whose eyes glistened with a mix of hope and despair. Remember me, don't forget. Footsteps clattered behind her, relentless and demonic. She stumbled downwards, gripping the railing as shadows clawed at her legs, trying to pull her back, to reclaim what they lost. A low, echoing crash split the air again from deeper within the mansion, the sound resonating like a death knell for all hope. Rachel couldn't look back now. Whatever had awakened in this place craved not only her life but her very soul. What was beneath the staircase? What truth was waiting in the darkness below? And then she heard it, a muffled cry, a voice she recognized, a voice that shattered her resolve. Help me, save us. The last maid's warning echoed in her mind. Save us. The bottom of the stairs loomed below. What stood there waiting to consume her despair or salvation? Just as she reached the final step, shadows engulfed her vision. The laughter surged again, louder and more manic, drowning her in its cacophony. Rachel realized then, she was not just running from them. She was running from herself. A reckoning is coming. She whispered, as the darkness pulled her down once more. Was she meant to save them all, or would she be consumed just like the others? The shadows swallowed Rachel as she hit the bottom step, her breath stolen by a cold that permeated the air. A suffocating darkness lay ahead, thick like molasses, wrapping around her like a shroud. The muffled cries still echoed, more desperate now, as if reaching for her through the very fabric of the house. Help us! The voice, both familiar and haunting, clawed at her mind. Was it James? She had to find him. She had to. Raising a trembling hand, she flicked on her phone's flashlight, the weak beam cutting through the gloom. It illuminated a long hallway, the dusty floorboards creaking under her weight. Each step felt strained, the wood protesting like a wounded creature. Shadows flickered at the edges of her vision, taunting her, pulsing with a hunger only nightmares knew. The air grew dense, almost electric, sending shivers crawling up her spine. She could feel it, the presence of something more than just the Harrisons. Something twisted, lurking behind the walls, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Rachel pressed forward, her pulse hammering a wild rhythm as she approached a door at the end of the hall. It was slightly ajar, a sinister invitation beckoning her within. She hesitated, heart racing. Do I dare? Then another cry shattered the stillness, raw and aching. Please save us. Without thinking, Rachel pushed the door wide open, the hinges screeching like tortured souls. Inside, the room was cloaked in darkness, only the moonlight filtering through dusty curtains, casting eerie shapes. A single flickering candle sat on a rickety table, illuminating a small, crumpled figure huddled in the corner. James. Her voice came out as a whisper, almost lost in the swirling shadows. The figure stirred, a gaunt face rising to meet her, eyes wide with terror. Rachel, his voice trembled. I thought you were gone. Panic surged through her. What happened? How did you? Before she could finish, a low growl rumbled from the corners of the room, and the shadows twisted, elongating like greedy hands. James flinched, retreating further into the corner as if the walls themselves could expand to engulf him. We need to leave. Now. She urged, but the door behind her slammed shut with a deafening thud. The candles flickered violently as the temperature dropped. Rachel, they know you're here. James's voice quaked, fear seeping through every word. They've been waiting for you. You have to understand. A chilling laugh erupted from the walls, reverberating, teasing. So naive, darling. You think you can save him? Or yourself? The voices of the Harrisons echoed, mixing with the sinister laughter until it became a grotesque symphony. Rachel felt herself choking. What do you want from us? Everything. Mr. Harrison's voice sliced through the tension, smooth as silk but laced with poison. You are as tangled in our web as the rest. Join us, Rachel. Only then will your suffering cease. Heart racing, she grasped James's trembling hand. We won't let them take us. Determination surged through her, igniting a spark of rebellion, but around them shadows coalesced, forming dark shapes, their edges sharp and menacing. Foolish girl. Mrs. Harrison snarled, her voice slithering around Rachel like a serpent. You don't even remember your true self. Rachel's mind flickered, flashes of memories that felt both foreign and familiar, laughter, warmth, and a name whispered in the dark. Who am I? The uncertainty gnawed at her, the shadows lunged, and the air crackled with malice. Rachel pulled James closer, their fear festering like a hot wound. In that moment of despair, she remembered the maid's pleading eyes. We have to confront them. We can't run anymore. But as she screamed the words, the shadows lunged forward, hungry to consume. You are nothing without your past. Mr. Harrison's laughter bounced off the walls, growing louder, more ominous. Rachel. James shouted, eyes wide with realization. They want you to remember. The room spiraled into chaos, darkness roared as the ground trembled beneath their feet. Rachel felt the tether of her sanity stretch to its breaking point. As shadows rushed forward, she grasped the last remnant of courage left in her. In one defiant cry, she screamed, I won't let you win. With that surge of strength, she charged towards the most engulfing darkness, knowing one thing, the truth awaited in the shadows. What would she unleash in that pitch-black abyss? And was she ready for the revelations that would follow? The shadows surged like a living organism, thrashing around Rachel as she plunged into the dark. Cold tendrils reached for her, wrapping around her limbs, drawing her closer to the heart of the gloom. A scream threatened to rupture her throat, but she swallowed it down, focused on the dim outline of James, still huddled against the wall. Stay close to me. She gasped, feeling the last threads of courage pull taut. Shadows clawed at her, darting perilously close, teasing her mind with fleeting images, a child's laughter mixed with sobbing cries, echoes of a past that felt urgent yet frustratingly out of reach. The candle sputtered, emitting a final flicker before plunging them into impenetrable darkness. Panic surged, her eyes strained to adjust, yet all they found was a depth of night that seemed endless. There. A whisper. Rachel, it was James, his voice trembling. We have to remember, Rachel. Before it's too late. The walls around them seemed to pulse, absorbing all sound, thumping like a heart racing in the chest of a monstrous beast. Rachel's grip on James tightened, her heart throbbing in sync with the chaos around them. Remember what? She shouted into the void, desperation flooding her tone. A low rumble responded, the shadows rippling in mocking laughter. You're just a vessel, a voice echoed, smooth and dangerously enticing. You belong to us, Rachel. Embrace your fate. No. I want tea. Her voice rang out, stronger than before. She stepped toward the pulsing darkness, defiance igniting in her veins, but then, a cascade of memories flooded her mind, uninvited and chaotic. She saw flashes of a woman with piercing eyes and an anxious smile, standing over a cradle as soft light bathed her in warmth. The recollection twisted savagely, turning to screams, cries for help, visions of darkness consuming everything. Who was she? Why did this house feel so familiar, so maddeningly wrong? Rachel. James urged. The maid, she knew something. She tried to warn us. We can't ignore it. Before she could process this, the fabric of reality tore apart. The walls shimmered, revealing a glimpse of the past, a hidden cellar, dimly lit, where shadows writhed and twisted, feeding off despair. Memories of laughter turned to anguish, and Rachel's mind reeled. I remember. She cried, her voice crescendoing. There was a child, a baby, your baby. The voices of the Harrisons slithered through the darkness, mingling with roars of laughter and pain. There was no denying it now. The truth throbbed in her mind like a dagger, sharp and unyielding. The shadows began to retreat, swirling like a whirlpool, revealing creaking floorboards and cold earth beneath. In the center, a small door loomed, beckoning her with the promise of answers. James's grip slackened, confusion washing over his features. What's behind there? Everything I lost. She shouted, determination surging through her. This was her chance to reclaim her past, to understand what sinister force lay shackled to her soul. No. It could be dangerous. James warned, but already, she moved towards the door, heart racing, pulse hammering in rhythm with the growing tumult around them. As she grasped the cold handle, a gut-wrenching howl reverberated through the air, as if the house itself was protesting. The shadows twisted violently, clawing at her legs, trying to pull her away. Rachel, don't. James cried, terror spilling over his voice. But she had to know. She had to face it all. With one resolute twist of the handle, she flung the door open, and with the ferocity of a cyclone, darkness exploded outward, swallowing her whole. Rachel. James screamed, but she had already been consumed, thrust into a world where truth and horror collided. What would she find in that abyss? Would it lead to salvation or another layer of darkness? The anticipation twisted tightly in her gut as the shadows clamored, promising both answers and dread. The door closed behind Rachel with a deafening slam, sealing her in an echoing void. Instantly, the ambience shifted, the air turned colder, thick as molasses. She stood, heart racing, listening to a low humming that vibrated through her bones. Whispers cascaded around her, a haunting symphony of disembodied voices. It felt intimate, yet grotesque, like a shroud of memories entangling her essence. There was no light here, but she felt a pull towards something beyond the inscrutable darkness. A faint shimmering ripple floated before her, giving the illusion of movement, hinting at life hidden within the depths. Yet every instinct screamed danger. With a deep breath, she stepped closer, a shiver coursing through her body as the weight of her fears hung heavy in the air. Rachel, help us, echoed around her, mingling with a child's laughter that morphed into a sobbing wail. James! She shouted, panic bubbling in her throat. No answer came. It felt as though time stood still, and she was utterly alone in this twisted abyss. Memories swirled in fragments: her baby, the maid, a woman's face with expressions of pain etched deep. Each thought felt like a thread unraveling, and the shadows danced, morphing into grotesque shapes, feeding on her turmoil. Suddenly the ground beneath her trembled. Light flickered in the distance. A dim glow began to form, and with it, a figure emerged, a silhouette draped in shadows, moving closer. Rachel squinted, compelled by an unseen force. "Who are you?" she rasped, dread pooling in her belly. The figure elongated, features sharpening in the dim light. It was the maid, the one who had warned her. "You should not have come here, Rachel." The past her voice was a brittle whisper, twisting with anguish. "It holds more than you know." Rachel's heart thundered, her breath hitching. "What do you mean?" "The shadows thrive on what you refuse to remember. They hunger to consume the truth." The maid's eyes glistened with tears, radiating a sadness that twisted Rachel's gut. "What truth?" Rachel pressed, desperation feeding her courage. "I need to understand. I need my baby back." "The baby that was taken from you." The maid hesitated, casting glances over her shoulder, as if the very darkness might overhear. "They want you to find them, to release them to the darkness. You must not. Remembering the past could cost you everything." Rachel staggered back, recalling the warmth of her child, the sudden chill that engulfed her world. "I can't let them go. I have to save my baby." "No. The shadows will claim you." The maid's warning ignited a flicker of defiance within Rachel. She stepped forward, rooted in determination. "I won't be a vessel anymore. I'll face them." Without warning, a monstrous hunger surged from the shadows, swallowing the maid in a brutal rush. She screamed, her voice torn apart, leaving nothing but a lingering echo of despair in Rachel's ears. An unseen force pushed her backward, threatening to suck her into the darkness. Staggering, she frantically searched for escape. The glimmer she'd seen before pulsed erratically, still beckoning her. Was it a chance to uncover the past? Or a trap laid by the very darkness she sought to escape? "Rachel, don't give in." James's voice pierced through the despair, pulling her back towards the forked path of fear and reclamation. As the shadows clawed at her again, Rachel made her decision. She had to confront this hell, for herself, for the baby. Rushing toward the light, she felt the shadows rip at her, grasping her waist and legs, dragging her down. Every fiber in her being begged her to return. But the pulsing light promised something more. In one final lurch of desperation, she dove toward the source. The brilliance blinded her momentarily. Then, she was enveloped by radiance, surrounded by echoes of laughter and cries blending into a symphony of chaos, and then everything shattered into silence. Where had she landed? What awaited her in this new realm of truth and terror? As the darkness whispered her name once more, a chilling uncertainty gripped her heart. Rachel landed softly, but the impact threw her mind into a spiral. She blinked against the dazzle of light that now melted away as swiftly as it had come. The silence around her buzzed, alive yet daunting. She was no longer in that all-consuming darkness. Instead, she stood in a desolate nursery, its air thick with dust and decay. A child's room turned graveyard. The once vibrant wallpaper began to peel, revealing faded patches of mold. A broken crib leaned ominously against one wall, and an abandoned stuffed bear lay on the floor, its gaze hollow and haunting. Rachel's heart stuttered. "James," she called again, her voice trembling. The word echoed back at her, drowned out by a chilling wind that swept through the room, making her shiver. A mirror on the wall caught her eye, cloudy and cracked. She approached, compelled to look deeper. In the reflection, she saw more than just her ragged self. Shadows shifted behind her, figures just out of frame. She spun around, but nothing was there. Just the relentless creaking of the house and her own heavy breaths. "Why did you come back?" a voice hissed from the corner of the room. It slithered into her ears, but she couldn't see the speaker. Was it a figment of her imagination, or something more sinister? "I need to find him," she shouted defiantly. "I want to let him go." "You should let him go," the voice countered, dripping with cruelty. "The truth of what happened here is buried deep, and it's going to haunt you too if you don't leave." Ignoring the warning, Rachel pressed forward. She had to know what had happened to her baby. Each step felt heavier than the last, as though the memories of the nursery itself were weighing her down, struggling to keep her shackled. As she approached the crib, the wood creaked under her weight. She reached out, her fingers brushing against the chipped surface. Something glimmered beneath, a glint of metal. With some effort, she pulled out a small, rusted locket. It felt so familiar. Her pulse quickened as she opened it, revealing a faded picture inside a child with familiar eyes. Something dark surged within her. The house vibrated, and she felt a presence materializing around her. The temperature plummeted once again. Shadows stretched and clawed at her, whispering secrets from the corners of the room. "They will take you to," the quiet voice warned again, now closer, more palpable. "They'll lump you in with the rest." "Who? What do you mean?" Rachel gasped, clutching the locket tightly, desperate for answers. It didn't seem possible, but she could feel the air thinning, an overwhelming weight pressing down on her spirit. The nursery's ghost stirred and whispered, their wails rose like a crescendo, drowning out her thoughts. Suddenly, a figure rippled into being in front of her, a woman, eyes wide and pleading, face drawn with sorrow. Rachel felt a spark of recognition. It was the maid from before, trapped inside the very walls of this nursery. "Help," the maid gasped. "You must find the truth, or you'll be part of it forever." Rachel stood frozen. Was this the truth the maid warned against? The shadows lurked close. They wanted her to join their ranks, to be another lost soul in this realm of misery. Torn between the allure of the truth and the terror of losing herself, she took a step backward, sensing the pull of the shadows tightening around her. Each breath felt more labored than the last, and a panic surged yet again. "Get out! Don't let them claim you!" The maid's voice faded, lost in a cacophony of sorrowful moans. Then, the nursery trembled, as if it were alive, and the shadows awoke in a frenzy. Rachel fought against the gathering darkness, but it wrapped around her like a serpent. With every ounce of will, she turned toward the door, a flicker of hope reignited. Was the truth worth the price? As the shadows clawed at her, she made a desperate dash, but would she escape, or would she uncover the darkness that waited to consume her whole? The door loomed ahead, but would she reach it before the past swallowed her alive? Rachel lunged for the door, her heart pounding violently against her ribs. The handle was cold, slick with the moisture of despair that clung to the room like a shroud. She twisted it, but the latch stuck, as if the house itself was conspiring to keep her trapped inside its suffocating grip. Behind her, the shadows writhed, whispering incoherent tales of sorrow and fury. She could feel their breath. It was icy, wrapping around her like a suffocating fog. Her mind raced. What truth awaited? Did it matter? If she couldn't get out, she would never find out. "Please!" Rachel yelled, tearing at the handle. "Let me go!" The shadows pulsed, vibrating with menace. "You want to leave? You can't escape the truth." With one last desperate shove, she shoved her shoulder against the door, forcing it open. It creaked like the cries of the damned, and she stumbled forward, desperate to flee the nursery's anguished grasp. But the corridor stretched ahead, impossibly long, dimly lit by flickering lights that buzzed with an unsettling hum. The wallpaper was peeling there too, dripping with a shabby elegance that spoke of forgotten joy. She paused, forcing herself to breathe, trying to calm the frantic beating of her heart. "James!" she shouted into the oppressive silence that lingered. Nothing answered but the deathly stillness, smothering her spirit as gently as a burial shroud. Her legs felt like lead as she moved down the hallway, the floorboards groaning beneath her weight as if trying to warn her of unseen dangers. She didn't know where to go, just that the way forward felt wrong. A pit of dread opened in her stomach. Suddenly, a door swung open to her left. Stale air escaped like a sigh, and a flicker of movement caught her eye. A little girl stood inside, her hair hanging in disarray, eyes wide like saucers. The child wore a faded dress, tattered at the edges, and she stared at Rachel with a mix of curiosity and sorrow. "Are you lost?" The girl's voice was an echo from a past that felt both foreign and familiar. "James the First, am looking for my baby," Rachel blurted, compelled to share the urgency of her quest. The little girl tilted her head, as if considering, and the shadows behind her seemed to writhe with impatience. "You shouldn't be here. They don't want you to find him." A chill raced down Rachel's spine. Who doesn't want me to find him?" "The ones who protect the secret," the girl whispered, her voice trembling. "You need to leave." "It's too late for me." Before Rachel could question her further, the walls of the corridor began to shake. The lights dimmed, plunging the space into darkness. The girl's face twisted in terror, and she stepped backward into the shadowed room, vanishing like smoke. "Wait!" Rachel reached out, but the doors slammed shut with a finality that echoed like a death knell. The walls shivered, expanding and contracting around her, as if the house itself was breathing, drawing her deeper into its dreadful heart. Panic mounted inside her like a storm, and with every ounce of courage left, she pressed onward, searching for another exit. Then she heard a muffled sob, low and resonant, curling through the darkness. It pulled at something deep within her, a maternal instinct that screamed for help. "James!" she shouted, forcing her legs to move faster. "I'm coming. I won't leave you." But the sob turned into a cacophony of wails, an entire symphony of sorrow joined, echoing through hallways that twisted and turned like a maze of despair. A single thought crashed through Rachel's mind: what if she freed her child but remained trapped within this house of shadows forever? The pounding in her head grew louder, drowning her senses. Could the darkness consume her if she cared too deeply? Rachel stumbled forward, her resolve wavering. No. Another pulse of fear, fueled by the vision of losing James to the very shadows that threatened to claim her. "This isn't over." She screamed into the void, her voice filled with defiance. But would obstinance protect her? Were those shadows the guardians of a darker truth, or would they reveal the hidden pain that had withered this nursery into grave space? Then, she saw a doorway at the end of the corridor, bathed in flickering light. Hope flared brightly, but dread streamed through her veins. What awaited her beyond that door? Could that be the way out, or just another trap waiting to ensnare her soul? Rachel surged forward, fueled by determination and fear. Each step echoed her heart's frantic race. The shadows, restless, swirled behind her, whispering malevolent secrets that danced through the air like smoke. She reached the door, heart pounding in her ears, feeling like a wild drumroll signaling both rescue and danger. Taking a deep breath, she thrust the door wide open. Light flooded her senses, but darkness sniffed at her heels like a raging monster, eager to reclaim what it thought was its own. She stumbled into a new space, a small, dimly lit room resembling a forgotten playroom. "James!" she called, her voice wavering, desperate for any sign of her son. An old rocking horse sat in a corner, its paint chipped and faded, and old toys littered the floor like forgotten memories. But it felt wrong, heavy with sorrow, like an abandoned shrine. And then, a figure emerged from behind a curtain, a child, little more than a shadow, but unmistakably James. "Mom!" he cried, his voice trembling yet filled with pure relief. With a surge of love, Rachel rushed toward him, and in seconds, she enveloped him in her arms, holding him tightly as if he were the very breath of life. "They can't have you," she whispered fiercely, desperation seeping into her bones, but their moment of reunion was shattered as shadows writhed around the doorframe, the laughter of the Harrisons echoing through the room, booming and taunting. "What makes you think you can just steal them away?" Mr. Harrison hissed, stepping into the light, his face twisted into a grotesque smile. Mrs. Harrison lingered behind, her eyes glinting with a malevolence that chilled Rachel to the core. "You're trapped, my dear." The truth will find you no matter where you run. The room trembled with their presence, shadows darting like fireflies. Rachel felt James pull away, fear glazing his innocent eyes. "Mom, what is happening?" "Stay close, James. I want to let them take you not like they did with me." As Rachel cast a desperate look around the room, a distinct memory surfaced. The locket. Clutching it tightly in her hand, she spoke with conviction. "You're wrong. I know what this is." Her voice echoed, filling the cavernous space with defiance, and just like that, in a moment of clarity, she thrust the locket toward them. "This isn't just a memory, it's a promise." The shadows faltered for an instant, their forms wavering like mist in a heavy fog. "You're mistaken," Mr. Harrison roared, taking a step back, confusion flaring in his eyes. "There's power in remembering," Rachel shouted, her voice strong and unwavering. "This isn't just about a past you tried to bury. It's mine, and I will reclaim it." As if summoned by her words, the air rippled, swirling with light brilliant enough to pierce through the enveloping darkness. The memories flooded back, joyous laughter, the warmth of her baby cradled in her arms reminding her of pure love that trumped the tendrils of despair trying to suffocate them. "Mom!" James cried, clutching her leg. The shadows shrieked as if the light burned them. They quarreled, twisting but failing to regain their grip. Rachel felt strength surge, a connection to her past, a reminder that love binds them together. She shouted, reaching for James' small hand. "Together we can break this." With a sharp, unyielding spirit, Rachel pressed forward, dragging James with her. The light enveloped them, a protective cocoon against the darkness threatening to devour. The shadows recoiled, retreating as the brilliance intensified, illuminating their surroundings and revealing the basement's true nature. And with one final defiant scream of "No!" Rachel hurled the locket into the heart of the darkness, shattering the hold it had over them. It exploded, sending shards of shimmering light through the shadows. In that overwhelming moment, the house shook, and the Harrisons' screams mingled with the cacophony of disintegrating gloom. Suddenly, the world around them shifted. The nursery crumbled, shadows dissipating into thin air, leaving behind nothing but echoes of memories that had long been trapped. Before Rachel knew it, she was outside, sunlight breaking through dark clouds, warming her face. The creeping feeling of dread melted away like morning mist. She stood at the front porch of the mansion with James clinging to her side. "Mom, we did it!" he exclaimed, eyes wide with disbelief. "Yes, we did, sweet boy." With the shadows of the mansion receding behind them like a distant nightmare, the Harrisons' influence fading like an echo of darkened laughter, Rachel took a deep breath. The air felt different, lighter, hopeful. Together, they stepped into the light, hand in hand, ready to live their lives free from fear. They had faced the darkness, claimed their truth, and emerged intact. In that fleeting moment, Rachel understood that the past would always shape them, but it wasn't their master. They were free at last. Now, if you are still with us, this is the moment to show your support. You need to subscribe now so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm. Seriously, it makes a difference. I want to know what you're all thinking, so flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this conclusion. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this. Your support means everything.